right, welcome everyone. I'm going to give folks a moment to get settled. Sorry for the slight delay here. Listen, I was really excited to try something new and fancy, add a little bit of polish to this whole cooking class experience. And just like what happens in live TV, we had some technical difficulties and we're falling back to, good old-fashioned Zoom screen. So thanks for your patience there as we get started. And I've got some homework to do after today's session, but be on the lookout for some fun, nice improvements to your experience. So listen, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. We're excited to bring you another Blue Circle Health cooking class. We sure hope you enjoy it. Let's do some quick introductions and then I'll do some housekeeping and then we can get started. Rita, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Rita Rubin. I'm one of the diabetes educators and dietitians here at Blue Circle. And I don't live with T1D, but I've been working with and supporting people with T1D for about 28 years or so. And I've taught tons of cooking classes during that time. So I'm so happy and fortunate to be able to do that here at Blue Circle. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I'm so glad you're here. So welcome.
Thank you, Rita. And my name is Scott Johnson, and I am a senior manager of community here at Blue Circle Health. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for 44 years. Appreciate you allowing me the honor and privilege of hosting today. In terms of an agenda, today we've got a couple of delicious soup recipes that Rita will guide us through. Preparing mom's best vegetable soup and Italian wedding soup. And I'll send these both in the chat in just a moment. And I'll also send them out in an email along with today's recording shortly after the class. But before we get going too far, I do need to cover some quick housekeeping items. Welcome and encourage you to use the chat feature along the way. It's a great way to share with the group, and I'll keep an eye on it throughout the session if you need anything. We'll also have plenty of time for questions and discussion as Rita takes us through today's recipes. If you have questions or want to share, just let us know in the chat. The session is being recorded. Participation in this event is completely voluntary. You may choose to leave at any time. Participation may reveal your identity and any identifying information that you share with other group participants. For example, comments in the chat and during discussions. And then finally, we are not providing medical advice, individual or otherwise, and we may refer you back to your healthcare team for detailed and individualized answers. Okay, I know that was a lot. Thanks for being patient with me. Let me get rid of these slides and replace my face with Rita's amazing cooking screen. And then we'll have both of Rita's cameras and we'll go from there. So with that, Rita, go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Well, again, welcome everybody. So glad you're joining us today. And yeah, we're making two soups today. So I'm going to dive right in because I want to make sure that we get them both done in the time that we have. And the first thing I'm going to do is chop some garlic. So this first soup is my mom's vegetable soup, or as close to my mom's vegetable soup as I can get, because she didn't cook with any recipes. And so this seems to taste, I'm gonna make sure you can see what I'm doing here, seems to taste pretty close to what she made. And she, my mom kind of cooked like 7 different meals my whole childhood. And it was great. It worked out fine because it helped her to manage her life. She had 5 kids. We weren't all close together, but there was 5 of us in and out. And then, my dad and a house and a job. So for her, just rotating, 7 different meals worked really well. And they were great. So it can work now for anybody, really, if figuring out what the heck to cook is a challenge. Just having a few recipes under your belt that you feel comfortable with can work just fine. It's really okay to eat kind of the same thing from week to week. It's not a problem. I'm wondering if any of you do that now. just to make life a little bit easier. Because you know, the purpose of these cooking classes is really to help make living with T1D a little bit easier for everybody. So, you know, if they're easy recipes and easy to follow, I'm just gonna adjust this camera a little. That's my hope. So I'm gonna chop the garlic first. And the reason is that garlic contains a really potent phytochemical called allicin. That's very protective of our health in a lot of different ways. It's an antioxidant, which means it protects our cells, cells lining your blood vessels in your heart and your nerves and your brain. It's anti-inflammatory. And it becomes more potent if you chop your garlic and then you let it sit for a little bit. Because when you do that, it lets more of the allicin develop in the garlic. There's a enzyme and a compound that have to come together with air to make the allicin. So that's why I try to remember to pre-chop my garlic. I don't always do it, but I'm going to do it tonight. So yeah, and chopping garlic, I just use my knife, rocking it back and forth. And the more garlic flavor you want, the smaller you want the pieces to be. So in other words, if you chop your garlic in big pieces or slices, the garlic flavor is going to be more mild than if you chop it into small pieces. Or if you want really strong garlic flavor, then mash it into a paste or use a garlic press. That works too. And it just gives you a stronger flavor. So we got our
Rita,
garlic.
we get
Yeah.
benefits like that if we're using garlic that's pre-chopped or in a jar or something like that.
Yeah, you do. You do. Yep. The allicin, once it's made, it's there. It's not going away. So yeah, you can use pre-chopped garlic too. I don't think it's very strong or high in garlic powder. I think I've read that. But yeah, you could use the pre-chopped. It's all good. So my garlic we're making allicin right now. So we're gonna set that aside. And then we're gonna chop an onion. So like a lot of recipes, the basis of this soup is onions, celery, carrots. And so my onion, I'm going to show you my trick for slicing and dicing an onion. What I do is I take it and I cut it lengthwise from stem to root. And so I'm just cutting the onion in half. And then I cut the stem side off here and I leave the root end intact and then peel it. So if you leave the root end intact, it actually holds the onion together while you're chopping it and makes it a little bit easier to do that. And onions are very nutritious as well. That's one of the cool things about soup is you put all of these incredibly nutritious ingredients together in one delicious dish. And it can just be a really powerful, satisfying meal that way. So onions also have some fiber in them, not a lot. There's about 3 grams per cup. And they also have another phytochemical. This one's called quercetin, and we'll talk about that in a sec. So to cut my onion, I've got a half, and I'm just going to take my knife and I'm going to cut horizontally through the onion like this. And then I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to make vertical slices down the onion like this. And I'm not cutting through the root end. I'm just going to keep that all intact. And if I wanted big chunks of onion, I would only make maybe 2 or 3 of these vertical slices, but I want a lot of smaller pieces. So I've got all these slices. It's kind of, it opens up like a fan like that. And then I'm just going to take my knife and slice through, and you get this nice dice, somewhat uniform size. Yeah, so the smaller you want the dice, just cut more slices into the onion. That one's a little slippery. So onion quercetin is another one of those antioxidant, anti-inflammatory chemicals. And there are studies that suggest that quercetin can even help lower cholesterol and blood pressure, kind of like a lot of the phytochemicals that you find in plants are like medicine in your body. So lots of onions and garlic, if those are foods that you like and tolerate, they can be wonderful additions to really increase the nutrients in your meals. Oh, this is a strong onion. Oh,
We
wow.
just got a question. We
Yeah,
just
go
got a
ahead.
question and tips to help your eyes not water so much. So it's timely
What?
that that's happening.
Oh, okay. What's the tip? Let me hear it.
We're asking, they're
Oh,
asking for
asking the
you if
tip.
you have any
Oh, I
tips.
thought
Yeah.
somebody had a good solution for me. Um, I have found are a couple of things that I've found. I found that if I refrigerate the onion, that seems to help. And um, I don't know. I've heard put a piece of bread in your mouth while you're slicing. I don't know. I haven't tried that. I have, I used to work in restaurants, a lot of restaurants. I did a lot of prep cook and stuff like that, and I used to have to chop a lot of onions sometimes. I used to wear swim goggles when I had to do that. It was very attractive, but it worked. But apparently regular glasses are not helping. So I do put my onions in the fridge. Yeah, yeah. So I think that helps. Yeah, excuse me, I'm tearing up here. So I've got my onions, my very smelly, potent onions. It's actually good. The more potent it is, the more that those phytochemicals in there. So if you can suffer through it, it's good for you. And so I'm now going to cut some celery. And I'd like to cook the celery with the onions first, because celery, like onions, contains a lot of water. So it actually takes a little bit more time to cook. And if I put the celery in with the other veggies, sometimes the celery doesn't cook and you have crunchy celery in your soup. And nobody likes that. It's not any fun. So with the celery, I'm just slicing down the stalks, just cutting them in half. And then I'm just going to take my knife and I'm going to cut my celery pretty small because I want this to cook pretty fast. So celery is actually a nutritious vegetable too. It's got more fiber, a couple grams per cup. It's got a lot of water in it. So if you live in a warm climate or with summer coming up and you're snacking on celery, you're actually helping to hydrate your body. Actually, snacking on fruits and vegetables in general helps hydrate your body. And let's see, what else does celery have? It's got some vitamin K, which we know is good for your bones, and also some potassium, which is helpful for uh, reducing blood pressure as well. So celery is a pretty nutritious little vegetable. Lots of ways to eat it, right? All right, so I've got my stove on and I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in my pot over here. Once I get this cooking, I'll show you what I'm doing over here. And I'm just going to toss in all of this lovely vegetables. I've got celery and my onions. And then I'm going to throw a little flavor on top of that. So if you think about making soup, you're basically trying to flavor water. So it helps to put layers of flavor in your soups as you're cooking, because that will make your soup richer and more flavorful. So we've got the base of the flavor. Here we've got onions and celery. I'm going to throw in some salt. I kind of sprinkle enough to just to kind of cover the vegetables. I'm going to do a big pinch of black pepper. And then I have some herbs here. These are just dried herbs. I've got a couple tablespoons of dried parsley, a couple teaspoons of dried basil, and some thyme, dried thyme. So easy herbs you can just keep on hand in your kitchen. I'll throw these in there too. And with dried herbs and spices, you can put those in at the beginning of the cooking because they will infuse flavor into the dish over time. So they can tolerate more cooking time than fresh herbs. And you could add fresh herbs to the soup but I would put those in like right before I serve it, just when the cooking's almost done, because those fresh herbs, the flavors don't last, but they can offer a really bright extra surprise flavor at the end if you put them in at the end. So you might want to chop up some fresh parsley or some fresh basil and put that on top of the soup when you serve it. And add some nice green color. It's real pretty. So that's just another way to add those layers of flavor, right? So I'm going to stir my pot over here. And just let that cook down for a few minutes. So let's chop up some more veggies. So I've got some carrots and potatoes that are going to go in next. These are lovely carrots here. I got at the local farmer's market. And similar to celery, I just take the carrots and I'll sometimes just cut them into smaller pieces because they're kind of rolly and they're a little hard to cut. So if I want to be safe with my knife, I cut them into smaller pieces. And then I'm just going to cut each piece in half. And then I'll cut those each into longer lengths. And then we'll use that. Then we'll dice them up. So carrots also are very nutritious. More fiber than celery. There's about 3.5 grams of fiber in a cup of carrots. They're actually pretty high in fiber. And as you know, so with diabetes, if your meals are higher in fiber, then that fiber slows down your digestion. And that can offer a number of benefits. One is that it helps you stay fuller longer and can actually help you get fuller with a little bit less food. It just takes up more space in your belly. And the other thing fiber does is it will slow down how quickly the carbohydrates in your meal turn to sugar and slow down how fast that sugar gets into your bloodstream. So if we can slow down the delivery of sugar enough so that your insulin has time to get there, then it can help a lot with those post-meal high blood sugars that you might experience. And so really thinking about increasing fiber can really help. And I'm wondering if anybody has noticed that. You know, if you've looked, just kind of observed with different meals, how different meals affect your blood sugar, if the high fiber ones are any better for you. All right, so carrots. Oh yeah, carrots have fiber. They also have beta carotene, which is very good for your eyes. And beta carotene is also a precursor to vitamin A, and that's also very good for your eyes and your immune system. I gotta stir my veggies. Carrots also contain a different phytochemical. It's called luteolin, I think, and that's really good for your brain. It can help to slow down cognitive decline that you get as you age, like I am doing right now. So, so we've got our carrots. I'm going to slice up some potatoes. Potatoes, I think, can be a great food, even if you have diabetes. And if you don't include them in your diet, that's okay. But there are ways to add potatoes with T1D that can be really beneficial in a number of ways. One thing is, I think potatoes or starches in general add a little bit of satiety to a meal, or satiety, or that sense of fullness that we get after we eat. If you ever notice, if you've got a real low carb meal and you don't feel particularly satisfied, or you get hungry like an hour later, it could be adding just a little bit of some starch, some carbs to that meal might help. And potatoes affect your blood sugars in different ways depending on how you cook them and how you eat them. So there's a trick. So if you put potatoes in a soup and you're basically boiling the potatoes, they don't raise your blood sugars as quickly as if you fry or you roast them, because the starch takes on a different shape.
Well, that's very interesting. I am not one that has done many soups with potatoes, but I might need to try that. Give this a shot. We've got
Yeah,
a few great comments coming in.
sure.
One says she eats a lot of high protein, high fiber, and have been playing with how to dose that with my carbs. Not easy, but very tasty. Absolutely.
Yes, it can be a little tricky when you play with that. Yeah, like, are you gonna adjust your insulin timing maybe, or the amount even? Yep, it can change it up. You bet.
Then another question, wondering if you're using the same veggies as the base for both soups.
I am. Yep, for sure. It's kind of a common theme in my kitchen.
Yeah, I
It's
love that.
nice. You can that way you can make different dishes with kind of some basic vegetables. Just changing
Mhm.
up the ingredients a little bit. And you have two different soups. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I love that we also you're showing us some skills with the knife and some tricks on how to cut the vegetables and stay safe with our sharp instruments. So that's
that's
we've
right.
had some comments expressing some gratitude there. Um,
Great.
Another
Great.
great question that came in: is there a difference in raw carrots versus cooked carrots?
Raw carrots versus cooked.
Hmm.
The basic nutrients are the same. Like the fiber content doesn't change, the beta carotene's the same, all that. Though when we cook them, they do affect blood sugars a little bit more quickly. So a
Okay.
raw carrot will definitely have a lower glycemic impact, which means that the sugar doesn't get into your bloodstream quite as fast, but a cooked carrot will
Mhm.
always act a little bit faster.
Yeah,
So,
that's interesting.
yeah.
A similar question around different types of potatoes. Are there any that are better or worse for you, blood sugar wise, when you're looking at, a red potato, a Yukon potato, a yellow potato, things like that?
That's a great question. Um, so what I found is that the one that seems to raise blood sugars the most is that typical baked potato. So like a russet potato, Idaho potato. Um, that's the thing that I've seen over the years, that it's just a quick starch. And I think I mentioned this maybe in the first cooking class, is that russets have also been hybridized so that the carbohydrate is a little bit higher. There's starches in the potato, but there's a little more actual sugar in that potato, because it helps them make better French fries.
Yeah,
Um, so that may be why, I don't know. But also, if you bake a potato, it has a bigger impact on your blood sugar. But if you boil it, or if you eat it, if you bake it or you steam it or you boil it and you eat it cold, like in a potato salad, or what I love to do is I put chunks of potato like in a green salad. Um, the cold potato doesn't hit you as hard as the cooked.
it's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah. So tend to prefer for glucose, for blood sugar, anything other than a russet seems to be.
yeah, that's great.
That's been my experience. I don't know if anybody has any different experience out there, but that's what I've seen over the years. Um,
Yeah, let us know in the chat. Another mention about the potatoes is enjoying using yellow potatoes for soup because they don't get as mushy. And is there,
that's right.
yeah,
That's a great point. Yeah, the waxy potatoes hold their shape better. Hmm. I'm just gonna grab my pot here and let's show you. So there's all those beautiful veggies in there
wow.
cooking away. So I'm gonna throw back over here. And now I'm actually gonna add some water to the pot. So just to help those veggies cook a little bit more evenly. So I'm gonna throw in enough water to kind of cover the veggies, about 4 cups. And oh, I forgot to throw in my garlic. Gotta do that too. And we're just gonna bring that up to a boil, and then we're gonna turn it down to a simmer. So yeah. Any other thoughts or questions before we
Yeah,
go?
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Another great question that came in. I'm going to read it verbatim right out of the chat here. Soup
Sure.
sounds delicious, but for time and convenience with work, I tend to stay with slightly higher protein meal. Would using the soup and maybe making a gravy work with some of these ingredients?
Yeah. Um, and I don't know if I heard the first part, Scott. Can you repeat that question? I heard the last end and then I didn't catch the first part.
Yeah, this soup sounds delicious, but for time and convenience with work, I tend to stay with slightly higher protein meals.
Mhm.
Using the soup and maybe making some sort of a gravy with some of these ingredients work.
Ah, um, well, certainly, I mean, I think with soup, one thing you can do is think of it as a thing you can pre-make and eat it throughout the week or even freeze it. So that might be a way to have some of that soup in like a during the week when when you're in a rush. You can certainly throw more protein in this soup. You could make it like you could put beef in it or chicken. Would make it a more high protein meal for sure. Um, and I don't know, don't know if I understand the part about the gravy. Like, could you like make the soup into a gravy? Don't know if I understand the question. So, um, but yeah, maybe if you can let me know more about that.
Yeah, let us know in the chat.
Yeah.
Another question coming in about doing any of this in a slow cooker.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, put it all in and then leave the house for 8 hours and you'll come home to soup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great.
that's another great thing about soup. You can throw it in the slow cooker. Yep. So we're gonna let this cook a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the ingredients and also how in other ways you can layer flavor into your soup. So next ingredient we're going to put in is this is one of my staple ingredients in my kitchen. It's diced tomatoes. So I always have cans of diced tomatoes and cans of beans because I can make lots of things with those. And what's cool about canned tomatoes is they're actually a lot of ways more nutritious than fresh because there's a particular phytochemical again in tomatoes called lycopene, and that's found in things that are red and pink and orange. There's some in orange, but the biggest source of lycopene in our diet is canned tomatoes. And because it just concentrates it and it's a lot more available in our bodies after the tomatoes have been cooked. So canned tomatoes are super nutritious. And so we know that lycopene can be helpful with protecting you from cancer, particularly prostate cancer, but also lung cancer, I think stomach cancer as well. So it helps to reduce the risks of those cancers. It's just another one of those antioxidant, anti-inflammatory chemicals that's real beneficial. But what I do first is I let the veggies cook because tomatoes, because they're so acidic, can actually slow the cooking down a little bit. So I always let the veggies cook till they're nice and tender, and then I put the tomatoes in after that. So they're going to go in a little bit. And then I'm also going to throw in a can of beans. And you can use any bean. These happen to be just canned garbanzos, which I happen to like in this soup. But you could put white beans in here, pinto beans, you could put red beans, really any kind of bean, lima beans, anything would help, would work. Also edamame. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Those are they're form of soybean and they're really, really high fiber, high protein, just like all beans, high fiber, high protein, so that you could put those in here too. So another way to add more protein, make this a more balanced meal is to add beans. And then we're going to put in a whole boatload of spinach. And you can use any kind of green, but spinach works really well. And so let's talk about the spinach because I've got some chopping to do. And
Can I redirect you for a second back
please,
into the beans as you prepare the spinach?
yeah,
We've got a great question there around. She says she loves adding beans to her soups because she's mostly meatless and asks, are all beans about the same, nutritionally speaking, or are there some that you maybe prefer over others?
Yeah, that's great. Beans can be a super source of protein on a plant-based diet for sure. And they're all about the same, fiber-wise, they can range from maybe 12 to 18 grams of fiber per cup, which is super high, right? If we're shooting for maybe 20 to 30 grams of fiber a day, that's a good chunk of that fiber. It's just in a cup of beans. And they all have about the same amount of protein, 14 to 16, I think, grams per cup, which is quite high as well. What else about beans? Beans also, they have kind of that slower to digest starch. Like if you boil the potatoes or you eat the potatoes cold, they have a slower digesting starch. We call it resistant starch. But beans have that too, so that they just digest the carbohydrate turns into sugar a little bit later on as it works down your digestive tract, so it's not like an immediate hit to your blood sugars. So again, that can really help with those post-meal blood sugars.
So it sounds like there's a lot of benefits kind of across the board, and that you can really pick based on your preference for taste or texture or those types of things. That's great.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. And some beans I think maybe go with better with different flavors. Black beans go great with like Mexican flavors and Spanish flavors, and white beans maybe go better with things like parsley and rosemary and thyme, that sort of thing. So yeah, you might have certain beans that you just really love with certain flavors. Yeah, I'm gonna grab my spinach.
These are great questions, folks. Please keep them
Yeah,
coming. Let us know. And
love it. Yeah. So I've got a big bowl of spinach here. And I'm not worried about it because you can put a lot of spinach in soup because it shrinks down, right? So this is a very large bunch. I got these at the farmer's market this weekend as well. So I'm just gonna take the big stems off of the spinach. Um, if this was baby spinach and they had little baby stems, I wouldn't mind. But a big stem in the soup isn't gonna feel really good to eat. It's not gonna be pleasant. So I'm just gonna take off the big stems. I think I've taken off some of these already. And I'm gonna chop this big bunch of spinach up and see if I can do the whole thing all at once. So a trick with that is I'm just gonna pile the leaves on top of each other. I think I might split it up. I'll just pile the leaves on top of each other, and you can do a couple things with these. I can roll them up and kind of slice up the rolled leaves, or I can just kind of slice through them. And so I think, yeah, this is when it's not really good for rolling. So I'm just gonna slice these guys. And so a good way to clean spinach, if you get like a bunch of spinach and not baby spinach, it can often have a lot of sand in it. And so I'm just turning this, so I'm gonna cut it the other way, just little smaller pieces. Um, I put it in a big bowl of water and let it sit and soak for a few seconds. You can get in there with your hands, swish it around, and then I rinse it, and then I do it again. Usually do it like 3 times if it's particularly sandy bunch of spinach. And that really helps because all of the sand is going to sink to the bottom of the bowl. And then you can just lift the spinach out and leave the dirt behind. Does anybody have another way they like to clean spinach? Because it can be a little tricky. It can be a little tricky to get all that dirt off. Again, if it's a bunch of spinach and not a baby spinach. If it's baby spinach, you just dump the whole thing in. I usually rinse it off though. If it's like a clamshell of spinach, I like to give it another rinse, just to make sure it's clean. So, all right, there's my spinach. Spinach, super, super nutritious, right? We got a lot of fiber in here. We got about 4 grams in a cup, and got uh potassium, good for your blood pressure. Got some calcium, also good for your blood pressure. got a phytochemical called lutein, which is really good for your eyes. Yeah, all greens are super, super good for you. So my soup is boiling, and I'm going to add my tomatoes. And I'm going to throw in the beans going in too. And I always find that if I do one more can of water, so I'm going to fill this can with water and put that in the soup, because otherwise it gets really thick. So I'll be right back. So got my water.
Rita, we've got another question about substituting kale instead of spinach, or maybe in addition to spinach. What are your thoughts on kale?
Yeah, kale's great. If you're using kale, cut it finely, maybe even smaller than the spinach, because it takes a longer time to cook because it's a little tougher than spinach. And but yeah, you could use both or either or. Definitely. If you find baby kale, that's great too, because that's super tender and that'll cook pretty quickly like the spinach does. Yeah, a great idea. So we're gonna simmer, and just want to talk about one other thing. Oh, I forgot to add my bay leaves. I'm gonna throw that in there. So bay leaves I usually throw into the soup to help to add that layer of flavor. And then if you want to get fancy, you can add other layers of flavor in here. So one thing you can do is do a bunch of fresh herbs. This is called a bouquet garni. It's parsley, and I have some fresh thyme, and I have some rosemary in here. So good, it smells so good. So I'm gonna throw this in this, and I just tied it with a little kitchen twine because I'm gonna fish this out of the soup. We're not gonna eat this. So it's just in a little kitchen twine, so that's going in the pot. And another thing that's really yummy to do if you have it, if you have like a chunk of Parmesan at home and you cut the end off, the rind, the hard rind, and throw that in the pot, that adds a really nice layer of flavor as well. So that's a fun little trick. I'm gonna put my spoon back here and I'll show you the soup. And here we go. All that good stuff. And it smells so delicious. So we're just gonna
So
let that.
Rita, with that kitchen twine,
Yeah.
you didn't necessarily like anchor it to anything or tie it off. It gives you enough of something you can pick out. You see it and can just fish it right out. That's so cool.
Fish it right out. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
neat.
Real easy. Yeah. All right. So now that's cooking. Let's talk about the Italian wedding soup. Same basic ingredients to start. And because you probably don't want to see me chop all these things all over again. I pre-chopped them. So I've got my onions and celery here. I've got my carrots. I've got some of that garlic left over. We're going to throw that in there. And the other ingredients are beans. The beans go in here too. This time we're going to use some, these are navy beans. You could use any kind of white bean, cannellinis. Pinto beans would work really well in this recipe too. So they're going in there. We're going to use a little bit of pre-made chicken broth and some pre-made meatballs. So it's really easy. This comes together so fast. Oh, and this gets spinach too. So you can see it's kind of the same soup, but it's not. And you can make this a vegetarian version. So I've made one. I make it with vegetarian broth and then vegetable broth, and then frozen. There's these really cool frozen mushroom meatballs that I found. And I put those in the soup instead of regular meatballs, and it tastes delicious. It's wonderful. So I've got my pan heating over here, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna add some oil. And it's nice, you need a little fat with when you're making these soups because it adds another layer of flavor and richness. It also, when you have some fat in your diet with all these lovely vegetables and phytochemicals, the fat actually helps you absorb those better. So I didn't use a lot, but enough olive oil to coat the bottom of the pan. And I'm gonna throw in my celery and onions.
And Rita, we have a question about it. Can
Yeah,
remember where you found the frozen the mushroom meatballs?
yeah, it was at a health food store in New York, but it's a local chain, so I don't know if they would be anywhere else. I don't know. I can't even remember the name of that brand. But I've also made my own mushroom meatballs, and I'd be happy to share that recipe with you guys. It's an amazing recipe. It comes from, or if you want to look it up, it comes from a blog called The First Mess. And she's got tons of like vegetarian, vegan recipes, and it's her mushroom meatballs. They're really good. So you could even make your own and freeze them, and then you could put them in your Italian wedding soup. They're really good. I'm stirring my veggies over here. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm layering flavor, right? I'm cooking the onions and onions and the celery. I'm throwing on a little bit of salt and pepper. And gonna cook those down until they're soft. And then we go, carrots go in there. Garlic, meatballs. Did I miss anything? I'm looking at the recipe. Make sure I don't miss anything. Yep, that's it. The beans, the broth, the spinach. That's it. And with this one, actually with any soup, there's an acronym I use. It's called FASS. F as in Frank, ASS, Sam. So FASS, FASS. It stands for fat, acid, salt, and sweet. So if you're trying to adjust flavors, think about those four things. And does it need a little more fat? Because fat will add some richness to the dish. It'll help bring flavors together. Does it need a little acid? Acid will help balance out flavors. And if you put too much salt in something, you could add a little acid to it. Salt, obviously, if it needs a little more salt. And then sometimes you need a little bit of sweet. So you can kind of play with that to when you're making food and you're wondering it's missing something. So you can kind of play with that. But with the Italian wedding soup, adding a little lemon juice at the end is helpful because it's a rich soup because it's got that meat in it. And having a little acid can kind of lighten the flavor and brighten it up a little bit. So I have a nice fat lemon here. Smells so good. Let's see, what else? What do you guys like about soup? I know I got a lot of requests for soup, so that's why we did this class. I want to hear why you like soup so much.
Yeah, we did. And while people are thinking and typing in their answers, Rita, I think I was able to find that recipe that you mentioned and got that put out in the chat. And
Excellent.
we'll include that in the recording, the email with the recording that
Thank
goes
you,
out.
Scott. That's great.
We've got a comment about when they're craving something kind of creamy, which she loves, and I do too. She adds some cottage cheese that she's blended well, and that helps
Oh,
with that creamy consistency.
yeah, sure. That's a great idea. And that cottage cheese has a little tang to it. So that helps to maybe balance out. That's got some acid in it. So that helps to balance out that richness a little bit. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I like too. I think I like to make like a big batch of food that I can eat over a series of days. I can also freeze it. But like that, just one big pot. I mean, it does take some chopping, there's some preparation involved usually, and then the pot just does all the cooking by itself. I don't have to worry about it, right? You can just stick it on the stove or in the crock pot and you're done. So it can be super easy. I think because it's so nutritious, like I said earlier, you can put everything in a pot of soup and get this boatload of nutrients. that's just gonna nourish your body and feel so good and comforting. I think soup is one of my most favorite soups because it's so comforting.
There's another comment about being a great sort of vehicle to take care of leftovers, right?
Yes, yep,
She makes endo soup at the end of the week. She adds all her leftovers and makes it into a soup.
yep.
And a
Again,
comment about using the crock pot, throw everything in and let the crock pot do all the work. Yeah, great.
yep, yep. Anything you can do to make nutritious, delicious meals that's easy. You know, all of those tricks work. Yeah, like I said, I used to work in I worked in a lot of restaurants in my day. And the soup of the day was very often one of those things. You had a lot of leftovers. And that became the soup of the special. So it works in restaurants too. So I'm gonna throw in my garlic. And I've got the celery and the carrots and the onions, the garlic. And then I'm gonna throw in these frozen meatballs. So these are just 12 ounces of little meatballs. So I'm throwing them in there. So they can saute and brown up a little bit with the veggies. So give them a stir. Yeah. So while these are cooking, I'm wondering, Scott, should we do our vote for next month?
I think that is a great idea. Let me
Okay.
push a few buttons here on this side and we'll get that up. All right, so there should be a poll happening on your screen, and I will also get a slide up on the screen too, so you can see. So it looks like the options for next month's recipe, we've got 3 easy snacks: hummus, high protein spinach artichoke dip, and homemade protein bar. The other option is the 1-pot lemony broccoli parmesan pasta and cold Asian style peanut noodles. These are some tough choices, Rita, because they both sound pretty fun to me. So far, winning the race in the poll is the 1-pot lemony broccoli dish and the cold Asian style peanut noodles, but we'll see. It's not a sure thing yet.
All right. The suspense.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll let that poll run for a while. I'm gonna go ahead and take the slides off the screen so we can see your cameras big and bright again.
Okay. Great. So I'm gonna pull out the little bouquet garni. It's a little soon, but I want to show you the soup before, as it looks when it's done. So I'm just gonna grab a pair of tongs here and pull that out, and then I'm gonna add the spinach to my soup. And then you'll see what it looks like. And in the meantime, I've got the meatballs cooking here, and they look pretty good. Show you that. So here's the base of the meatball Italian wedding soup.
Oh, that looks great.
Good, huh? So put that back on the heat. And now for that, I'm gonna throw in like quarter chicken broth. And then I dilute it down. I actually put water, not just all chicken broth, because for my taste, it's just too much chicken broth, isn't it?
Mhm.
So I'm gonna put in some water, just a couple cups of water into the pot. I'm also gonna throw in my beans.
Mhm. While you're doing that, another great question came in. Is there a difference, a nutritional difference between fresh and frozen spinach?
No, no, really not at all. You know, frozen veggies can work really well. They're often a little bit more nutritious than fresh with some of the nutrients that might degrade over time, like vitamin C. Because they when they you pick when they pick veggies and freeze them, they freeze them pretty quickly after they're picked. So some of those nutrients can be preserved when they're frozen. If they're fresh and they've traveled a ways, they've been sitting on the grocery store shelf for a few days, they actually may lose some of those nutrients. So frozen can be absolutely fine and would work fine in these soups. Absolutely. I would buy the chopped spinach. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. We got a
Yeah.
lot of like, oh, really? And how interesting in the comments. I also like frozen because I often will buy more produce than I realistically use. And the frozen, if I go that route, it doesn't go bad as quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's no fun wasting food and wasting money, if you're not going to eat it
Hmm.
fast enough. Frozen's perfect solution for that. Another thing that I often put in this soup is green beans and the frozen kind, or even canned. Canned work really well too. So, like I said, make this soup your own. You can add all sorts of things here. Let me show you what it looks like. And bring it
We got
over.
a question about the bay leaves,
Yeah.
asking if they need to be removed before eating the soup. She says years ago, she
Yeah.
heard it adds great flavor, but shouldn't necessarily be eaten.
No, you
Any,
don't want to eat them. Yep. They're very unpleasant to eat. Um, I usually don't go fishing around in this big pot of soup for them. So if they show up in my bowl, I pick them out. Yeah, bay leaves are very crunchy. They don't get soft.
great question. I'm glad you asked,
It's a
and I'm
good
glad we
question.
got
I
the
love
answer.
that
Yeah.
question. So there's your soup. There's your veggie soup. It's all beautiful. I'm gonna stick it back on the
That looks,
stove to
yeah, that looks amazing.
yeah. And this Italian wedding soup is just starting to get into a boil and let it simmer for a minute, and then we're gonna throw in the spinach. So
Yeah, that's great. Maybe what we can do while that is cooking, I'm going to bring up our events calendar,
oh
and
yeah,
we will share some information about some of the stuff that's coming up here. In just a moment. All right, so future events coming up this Wednesday. So just in a couple of days, we're going to host a webinar where Rita joins us again, along with Sherry, and they're going to be just talking about general nutrition and meal prepping with T1D. We're going to do some fun like whiteboard exercises, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a great event. And then Thursday and Friday, so moving into May, on May 1st and 2nd, will be the English group sessions. Again, for those, we run 2 sessions, and you're welcome to come to whichever works best for your schedule, or both if you like. We would love to see people as often as you would like to see us. Uh, Topic for this month, plan topic was reading your reports, which I remember Xanadu mentioning that she might need to adjust the topics a little bit. So don't quote me on that one. However, we do have a webinar on exactly that topic a little bit later on the 22nd, about kind of making sense of your T1D data. And then we do have the next month's cooking class on Monday, May 12th. Then there's also the Spanish group session that happens on May 8th. So keep an eye on your emails and text messages for the information about those. All right,
I
I've
just
got
saw.
my
I
slides off the screen there.
think I saw a question in the chat was if you use a crock pot, should you pre-cook the veggies. And you don't have to, because the crock pot will just slowly cook them. Usually let it cook for 4 to 8 hours, so they'll be nice and soft. If you wanted to, like, if your crock pot has like a sear, that the sear feature where you can like brown stuff a little bit. You could like maybe brown your, you don't really need to brown them, but you could pre-cook your onions and your celery in a little olive oil just to give it another layer of flavor. But you don't have to do that. Yeah, it'll all just cook down. It'll be good. So I've got my Italian wedding soup simmering away. I'll bring this over and show you. There we go. Isn't that
Wow,
beautiful?
look at that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that looks delicious.
so delicious. It's got to simmer a little bit longer, but there you go. 2 big pots of soup in what do we do that in 45 minutes or
We
so?
did about 45 minutes. Yeah. When you're, Rita, when you're looking at trying to figure out when it's done or not, you mentioned that that one has to simmer a little bit more. What are you looking for to decide whether it's had enough or not?
Just fish out some veggies and test them. Yeah, see
Mhm.
if they're tender. And then even when they're tender, I might let them sit and simmer a little bit longer just to get more flavors, melded throughout the soup. And
Mhm.
um and soup, another thing I like about soup is it's one of the leftovers that actually tastes better the next day.
Yeah.
Soup, if you let it sit and you don't eat it right away, eat it the next day, just those flavors just all get together. And but always taste your soup afterwards, and taste it as you go along. I didn't do that this time, but I usually am tasting it. I'm like, what does it need? Taste it for salt, pepper, your seasonings, and just to see if it's the way you like it.
Yeah. Great. Well, I know we're reaching that time, and I've got a whole house full of dogs going crazy here. I don't know if you
Oh,
can hear that,
oh, you
but
better get to it.
better get to it. But Rita, thank you. This was so much fun, and everyone, thanks so much for coming, and thank you even more, especially for all the great questions and discussion points. I know Rita, you love when we can make this more of a discussion and interaction and answering questions. So that's super fun. I love it.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for all your comments and questions. It makes it a much richer experience for us all. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I will send out the recording of this webinar along with the recipes we'll have attached. I'll include the recipe for the vegetarian mushroom meatballs that Rita mentioned, as well as the FAST acronym and key. So lots of really good, useful tips here. So we'll get that out. It will probably be, if not later this week, early next week sometime. And then again, join us on Wednesday afternoon, early evening for Rita and Sherry together talking about nutrition and T1D.
Yeah. Hope
Thank
to see you guys there.
Thank you. Yes, happy birthday. I celebrated a birthday just last week. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.